We're gonna fight for love.
Welcome to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Ralph Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We have an amazing, wonderful, spectacular, you won't believe how good it is show for you today. We start out talking about women in the economy, what just happened, what's about to happen, and what you can do to make sure that women can indeed fuel our economy in the ways that work for us. Then we go into talking about services for the aging, and we even dive into the fact that we're all getting older each day. And it's a beautiful thing. How can we make aging beautiful for everyone? After that, we dive into paid leave for all, universal paid family medical leave. It's moving forward, people. It is moving forward. How you can tip it over the edge for change so we can join the other 177 countries that have this policy in place. And we close the show talking about the Momnibus. It's not a bus that you drive on the road. It's a bus of multiple pieces of legislation for change to help address the maternal health disparities, the racial bias, and the discrimination in our healthcare system that is causing the maternal mortality to go up in the United States of America and causing 3 to 4 times more Black women to die in childbirth than white women. We have to do something about this. We have to fix our healthcare system. We're going to find out how. Now we're going to jump right in with our first guest. We are joined right now by a Wonder Woman superstar, nation changer, world lifter, Fatima Gosgraves of the National Women's Law Center. Welcome, Fatima. Woo!
Kristen, I'm so glad to be here. And it is so much fun to work by your side and with Moms Rising, marching millions always. So glad to be here.
Such a joy and an honor to be here with you as you are doing so much right now. I don't even know how a person can fit all that you do into one 24-hour a day. So let's talk about the big moment of change, this big moment of opportunity right now, and what it means particularly for women. One of the things when we're talking about the infrastructure package, also as people keep calling it the BIF, bipartisan infrastructure package, which just cracks me up because I want like the BFF jewelry that goes along with that. But the infrastructure package and the reconciliation package, also known as the Biden budget blueprint, where are women fitting in? And what do you see about this moment in time, women in the workforce?
So, I mean, it's not a secret that traditional physical infrastructure jobs in construction, jobs in the STEM field, both old STEM and new STEM, have been dominated by men. That's not a new idea. It's longstanding. It's entrenched in old gender and race stereotypes. And I do think that part of the plan includes creating more pathways to women for those jobs. But I also see that as a long range plan. And I'm laser focused on both how are we improving the jobs that women are already doing right now, today, the fields they're in. How do we make those jobs that pay high wages and have working conditions that are dignity working conditions? And how do we make it possible for all women, no matter where they work, whether they are a handful in a traditionally male field or dominated field by women or somewhere in between? How do we make it possible for them to be able to provide for themselves and their families? And the missing piece here is that women are engaged in work and in care. It's not just a handful of women who are engaged in work and in care. They are dramatically engaged in work and care at the same time. And if we're going to make it possible for them to thrive, for their families to thrive, for our economy to grow, we gotta acknowledge these realities. I feel like that's what COVID taught us. There's a bunch of realities we've been living with. A really fragile care infrastructure, a workforce that we called essential but paid terrible low wages, a health equity infrastructure that you're kind of worried about. COVID taught us a lot of lessons. Let's learn that lesson. And when we have a big historic chance to invest, let's invest the right way.
Let's build back better. So what does building back better mean right now in this BFF, also known as the BIF, and Biden budget blueprint moment? What are we looking for? What should everybody be looking for? What's bringing you hope about real change, about people having a reality check, as you said, about here's what's actually happening with the people in the United States of America, including women, including the 86% of American women who have children by the time they're 44 years old, including the American women who are moms who are experiencing compounded wage and hiring discrimination for being moms, and then for being moms of color due to structural racism. There's a tremendous amount of barriers that we needed to break through before the pandemic. And those barriers have come crushing down, suffocating women in the labor force, pushing women out of the labor force by the millions. And now we have a moment with this reality check. What can we do better to build back better?
So the pandemic taught us all of that and more. And we watched as women struggled to stay connected to work and left involuntarily so that they weren't even captured in the numbers of people looking for jobs. We were in a crisis moment and had gone back to the 1980s levels. And that should have been a wake-up call for everyone. I think it was the sort of wake-up call for people around the country. It's sort of the primal scream that the New York Times talked about. And so the big question before us is whether or not Congress is going to deliver. Are they going to deliver in a way that responds to what people have been facing this last year, and deliver in a way that sets them up not where we were when the world shut down because of the pandemic in March of 2020? Where we should have always been. We always should have paid women who were doing the jobs of care wages with dignity. We always should have ensured that people could find childcare when they needed it, and that the bulk of their income wasn't going to paying for childcare, that where they weren't sort of working for care. We always should have ensured that people had the secure job security and leave to be able to care for themselves and for their loved ones. Those are things we should have known. We always should have ensured that our families who had the lowest incomes didn't fall off a cliff, that there was something that caught ourselves for our society. Those were decision points that we are making in real time. And it will tell us how we feel about our values. It will tell us what this country values. And so I'm hopeful, and I'm not always hopeful. I lean optimistic, but I'm not always hopeful. I'm hopeful right now because when I think about the people who have showed up again and again the last year demanding something different, they cannot be ignored. These are not usual times where people can just sort of pretend like, there's no real childcare problem. You can't ignore it. Everyone was struggling. It came home to everyone. And so we got to do something about it.
One of the things that I saw recently, which made my eyebrows go all the way up in the air, because I was like, I knew this intuitively, but now to see it in writing made me say, oh, what I've known intuitively, and I know what you've known intuitively for a long time is so true, is that our GDP will be boosted by 10 to 15% if we put in place the policies that you were just talking about. Childcare for everyone, paid family medical leave in a universal way, making sure we have home and community-based services for the elderly and people who are disabled, ensuring living wages for all care workers and a path to citizenship for people who are essential workers and care workers, making sure jobs are treated with dignity and paid as such in the care infrastructure sector. And 10 to 15% GDP growth is nothing to sneeze at. It is so important. And right here, I just want to step back and say, this isn't just the right thing to do that we know in our hearts and our souls. Yeah. This is the smart thing to do economically. Women are the economic engine of right now and of our future. And the care industry is expected to be the fastest growing industry moving forward, and particularly in a time when women make the majority of consumer purchasing decisions in an economy that is 72% based on consumer purchasing decisions. So I want to just sit with that for a moment and, did you see that study? I'm sure you did. And I want to hear what happened to your eyebrows when you saw it.
I did. Well, it's one of those things that intuitively, but to see it in a study is reassuring. And it is why early on, I shouldn't have been surprised that the Fed was thinking about these issues, that Treasury was having conversations, that Commerce. So it wasn't just the Department of Labor was thinking about it. And that is because precisely what you said, that women are an economic engine. And in a conversation in this country about how we invest in our economy, in jobs, and ensure our families can thrive, we have to start with what do women need?
Mhm.
And we've learned a lesson about what that is. It is good for them and their families, yes, but it is also a project of growing the economy, making it more secure, and planning for the future, which is exactly what we should be doing right now as a country.
So true. And right now we're seeing a lot of people complaining that they can't go to their favorite restaurants, not because of COVID closures, but because people cannot hire enough staff. What's happening when you look at that sector? Well, that sector, the majority of minimum wage jobs are held by women. The minimum wage is a sub-living wage. And so when we look across the sectors and we say, how do we get businesses reopened? Well, we get businesses reopened by building a care infrastructure that includes living wages. And so one of the things that's exciting to me is to see so many businesses also coming together and saying, wait a minute, the fact that we don't have this care infrastructure is hurting our business. Like, we literally cannot run without women. It's sort of like an accidental walkout, right, across America, because if it costs more for childcare than it does to work, then that is a problem. And that's all too common. But the thing is these are much needed jobs. Sometimes people of some sorts of persuasions, not naming any names, are like, well, why are you working anyway? I'm like, well, how are you supposed to eat, put food on the table, put a roof over your children's heads? These are much needed jobs. And when we're having these conversations, just for listeners, I think it's really important to remember that only 10% of women in America make more than $75,000 a year. So we're talking about universal policies that cover everyone of all wages, and not just about what happens in those top 10% of earners, because that's how we drive our economies. That's how we lift our families out of poverty. That's how we build a future where everyone can thrive. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, a couple of things that people have been talking about. Do we have a labor shortage? But I actually think we have a care shortage and a wage shortage. So there are flaws in our system, but we have to start thinking about why is it that people are having trouble filling some of the roles, and the pay is too little and too insecure. So that's the wage shortage. And the care shortage just is the care crisis we have in this country, where we are still in a process of bringing back child care providers. And not everyone wants to come back because the pay is so low. And so we got to solve the labor problem. We got to solve the care crisis. We got to solve the wage crisis. And doing that will situate us better generally. It's the thing that businesses are complaining about constantly, about how they are worried about the child care crisis upending their ability to be stable as businesses. If you only want to listen to businesses, then that is out there. They've been clear about that. And I guess the last thing I just want to say about your point around the wages people are earning and how different families are experiencing this time, there definitely is a real disconnect. It's almost like we've had two pandemics with, one set of folks who've been on the front line with one set of hardships, another set of folks who haven't. But the thing is, there are some issues that cut across power and class and more. And I really think care is one of them. It is one of those things where people may not have actually been exactly in the shoes of someone who is making the lowest wages and still trying to solve their care problem. But they have experienced what it's like to be in a care infrastructure that is so fragile, where you can't afford childcare, you can't find childcare, and you're struggling with the quality. And so when you have that across, it gives me really hope that we can rally together and present ourselves as a block demanding this together.
And we are rallying together. We have 1 minute left. What's the rallying cry? What can people do? Everybody, of course, should join the National Women's Law Center. Follow Fatima on Twitter. But what action in the last minute, what hopeful action can people take?
Yes, follow us, sign up. Please do all of that, because we want to be in conversation with you. But the big thing you can do over the next couple of weeks that will make a difference is to call Congress and tell them you demand, it is urgent that they prioritize care investment in infrastructure. Prioritize childcare, paid leave, and home and community-based services. Support our workers, support our moms, support our families, and support our economy.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for being on. Thanks for all you do. It's an honor and a joy, as always, to talk and work with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Good to be with you guys.
We're going to take a quick break, but stick around. We'll be right back with getting older. Is it happening to you? Yes, it is. Now, what are we going to do about it? We'll be back in a quick flash.
We're gonna fight for love. Fight for love. Fight for love. Fight for love.
Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Ralph Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined right now by a wonderful, spectacular, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, world-changing, nation-lifting guest, Nicole Jorwick of the Ark. Woo! Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was the highlight of my day already.
I just want everybody out there who's listening to try to say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious 5 times fast and then call your member of Congress. It will seem easy to call your member of Congress after you say that word.
Absolutely.
5 times fast. That's all I have to say. So speaking of Congress, Nicole, you are leading the way on something that we're all calling HCBS. Now, I want everybody to do it like the YMCA, HBCS. There's a dance, get involved. But what is HCBS? Why is it important? And it is at the center of our nation's conversation right now. Even if we haven't told you yet what HCBS means, you already love it, listeners. You already love it. Nicole, what is it that everybody loves?
Yes. So HCBS is a service system, and what it stands for is home and community-based services. Home and community-based services are funded through the Medicaid program, and it provides everything from home care for seniors, group home and residential supports and for individuals with disabilities, job coaching for people with disabilities, home nursing for children with disabilities. So it's a service system that keeps people with disabilities and aging adults outside of institutional settings. So it's really those services that keep people safe and healthy in their own homes and in their own communities.
One of the really important things about HCBS is not only that it keeps people healthy, keeps people treated with dignity, and keeps people safe, but also it creates a giant labor force. And so this policy is both job enabling family members who need to work to go to work and have their other family members in good care, but also job creating. And can you talk a little bit about the job creating part?
Yes. So the services, home and community-based services, are provided by a variety of different members of what we call the direct care workforce. So personal care attendants, home health workers, direct support professionals. And so that job already exists. And already there's a huge amount of people working in that field. We know, though, that this investment, I was just pulling something up. We know that this investment will create at least 500,000 new caregiving jobs, because we know that there are so many people right now who's filling in the gaps for those services, for the workers that we don't have yet in the system are unpaid family caregivers. And so that's really what we need to fill. So, and that really then is a twofold economic boon, because you have direct care workers, and we want to make sure with this funding that we're making those direct care jobs good jobs, because right now they're not well paid. So part of this funding will make those jobs good jobs. We'll create more of them. So there's that economic and job creating point. And then unpaid family caregivers can re-enter the workforce.
It's so important. And when we're looking at what's happening with our population and our population change, we see that we have an elder boom coming, that there's going to be a tremendous amount of people who are aging and needing direct care, home and community-based services. And in fact, one study I saw found that one of the top areas of job growth in the coming decades is direct care. And have you seen those same kind of studies?
Yes. We know that this is an industry that is going to be growing because the population is aging. We know that baby boomers are going to be aging in to the need of this. We also know that this is what aging adults want. 91% of aging adults want to age in place. So we need to have the workers to support them to do that. So we have the aging side that's going to lead to this huge increase in the need. It is one of the leading the job areas that's going to be have the most growth in the next decade. We also know that, for example, 1 million children with autism are going to age into the adult service system. So whether it's for people with disabilities who receive these services or aging adults, both of them are going to be growing. The need is going to be growing. And we also have a waiting list. So there's 800,000 people, 850,000 people that we know of on waiting lists. There's probably more who don't even know there are lists to be on. All of those people, once you start serving them, that's also job creating. That's part of why that we're going to see that growth.
It's so important. And so people, if you're listening and you're aging, then you care about this issue area. And I smile because my grandma, she's 105 years old, 0.5. So she'll be 106 in January 2022. And she always reminds me that there is no old, there is only older. Like, in fact, she reminded me of this last week. Kristen, there's no old, only older. So if you are getting older in any way, shape, or form, if you are 2 years old or 102, then you care about this policy, even if you didn't know about it yet. That's why I was like, everybody needs this HCBS, just like the YMCA dance. I want to see people doing the HCBS dance. Like if the song comes on YMCA, we got to make up the song, Nicole. We got to get this like.
I think so.
We need a band. Any listeners out there in a band who want to make a song HCBS that is sort of like the YMCA song so we can like do our dance? This needs to happen because this is how we are going to have people age with dignity. This is how we are going to enable people to work who are primary caregivers. This is how we are going to allow people to live with dignity. And can you talk about what is your hope for change here? And also, if you could slip in, what can people do along the way? Because now that listeners, you know you care about this, you might not have known before this segment, since you are getting older, I'll just say it, you're getting older, you do care. So what should people do?
Yes, we're all aging, and this is something that we all hope that we will be able to, a need that we hope we will be able to age into. And it's also something that a lot of people don't understand, that programs like Medicare doesn't cover. And so that's why we need this big investment in HCBS. And I am hopeful that that is something that we're going to see, this big investment to not only support individuals receiving the services, but the unpaid family caregivers and the direct care workforce. I'm so hopeful that we're going to get there, because unfortunately, some of the terrible things that happened during the pandemic really exposed the gaps in the system, just like so many other care systems. And so we are on the precipice, I think, of this huge change of eliminating waiting lists, of having enough workers so that family members have peace of mind in order to do the things that they need to do. And so I am hopeful that we're there. How to make it happen is to engage on the issue. The ARC is part of the Care Can't Wait Coalition. We have the arc.org/action is our action center. The HCBS funding is our top priority as an organization. So you can reach out to members of Congress. You don't have to have a personal connection to the issue to be able to say it. All you have to say is that you know that this is an investment that we need to make in the country, in the long-term care system, in home and community-based services, so that everybody can age with dignity and people with disabilities can live with dignity with the level of independence that they can.
And you can even just say yes on HCBS. I guarantee you, because of the work of Nicole and the ARC, every member of Congress will know what you're talking about when you say HCBS. But home and community-based services, so important. Now, speaking of every member of Congress knowing what we're talking about with acronyms because of your work at the ARC, can you share a little bit about the ARC and how everybody can get involved in the ARC?
Sure. The ARC is an organization that was founded by families like mine. I have a brother who's 31 and has autism, who wanted integration and community-based services for their family members with disabilities. The mission of the ARC is to promote and protect the civil rights of people with disabilities. And so we have chapters, 600 chapters all over the country. So you might know a local ARC that provides services, or a state ARC that does state level advocacy on HCBS in your state. And we are really lucky to work in coalition with a lot of other groups, which is why HCBS is something that's getting a lot of attention. And we're really lucky and grateful that there are groups outside of just the disability and aging communities, including amazing groups like Moms Rising that are really focused in on this issue, because we know once people hear about it, everybody agrees that it's something we should be focusing on. 80% of voters in a poll in a bipartisan way supported funding like this. So that's what the ARC does. That's what we all can do together. And it's really a unique moment for this really important investment after decades of lack of investment. So we're really grateful.
And what's your website, your Twitter handle, your all the things? Because everybody, you need to get involved in the ARC.
Yes. So it's www.thearc.org/action. That's our action center, where it'll get you to how to reach out to your legislators on these issues. And the arc.org is just our website for everything. We have a Care Can't Wait page that is tying together our issues. And we also are very tied into the paid leave fight as well. And then we have at the ARC US is our Twitter. And for me, I'm at njorwick, JORWIC. I pretty much only tweet about HCBS. So it's a easy when you have a simple message, which is that we need this funding and we need it now. So
we need it yesterday. I mean,
True.
The lack of investment in our care infrastructure came into sharp relief during the pandemic, but already was an emergency before the pandemic. And is not fixed by the vaccine, people. We have an aging population and elder boom coming. And as we have noted, everybody on this listening right now across the country is in this very moment aging in a beautiful, spectacular way. And we want to keep the aging to be beautiful, spectacular, and dignified. We don't want it to, end up in a crisis. What stories of hope, what wins have you seen along the way that give you sort of fire to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, the American Rescue Plan Act, which was the recovery package, included funding that the disability and aging and labor groups had been working together on for a year to get funding into the system because we knew that it was at particular risk. So that $12.7 billion investment for 1 year was really what I've been comparing to patches for holes in a sinking ship. And so that was a win, though, and it was a real recognition of all the grassroots advocates all over the country that have been reaching out on those issues. We also have seen some extensions and investments in programs that move people out of institutional settings like nursing facilities and institutions and back into their homes and communities. That's called the Money Follows the Person program. That was reauthorized for 3 years at the end of the year last year. So we have seen these small glimmers of recognition that what we need to be focusing on is making sure that there's the infrastructure in the capacity in the community for these services so that we're not left to rely on either unpaid family caregivers or facilities, which were obviously incredibly problematic during the pandemic and were public health crises even before the pandemic, just in flu season and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. It is a public health crisis to have people grouped together and not properly receiving the dignified lifelong care that people need. Yeah, that's so huge. So if you have one piece of advice, we're on the precipice of change. We have home and community-based services in the tentative budget reconciliation package, also known as the Biden budget blueprint. What one lasting piece of advice do you have for people before we let you go in the last minute?
The one piece of advice I have for people is to not be intimidated by the issue. You don't have to be an expert on Medicaid. You don't have to even know what the H, C, or B, or S stands for. All you have to know is why it's important to invest in care for older adults and people with disabilities and the workforce that supports them. You don't have to be intimidated by the process. All you have to do, you might have a neighbor, you might have a cousin, you might have a grandparent, tell that story and say that's why we need to see those investments. The rest will work itself out. And that's what legislators remember, that's what staff remember, are the people and the faces and the stories. So don't be intimidated and keep working hard.
+1 to that. Thank you so much for being on, Nicole. Thanks for all you do. It's an honor and joy to work by your side.
All right back at you, Kristen. Thank you so much.
We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. Next up, we're talking about paid family medical leave. Yes, it's my favorite topic. Don't judge, but we have more news that you can use on this area. We'll be back in a quick flash.
We're gonna fight for love. Fight for love. Fight for love. Fight for love.
Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Ralph Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined right now by by an amazing superstar who you are going to love so much. We're going to talk about paid leave for all, universal paid leave, people. Dawn Huckelbridge, who is bringing the United States forward to meet the other 177 countries who have this policy in place. She is with paid leave for all. And by for all, we mean everyone. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you, Kristen. What an intro. Happy to be here.
So, Dawn, it has been 800,000 moments recently where we have been poised to make this big national leap forward. We saw the first national paid leave policy temporarily go in place and not cover everyone in one of the relief packages that went through Congress during the pandemic, but it showed us that we can make a national paid family medical leave policy. We can catch up with the rest of the world. What are you thinking right now are the chances?
So I think it's so interesting about what you just said, Kristen, is that this temporary emergency paid leave program that we put in place during COVID, it passed. It was a historic vote, a bipartisan vote. And so many people across the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, touted that vote and talked about how, very sensibly, how important that was to carrying working families through this pandemic, and how paid leave is a life raft to families in terms of keeping their jobs, taking care of themselves and their families, and how this is just a common sense protection. So what I think is that this is the time, if we don't learn after this last pandemic, that we need to have this policy in place before a crisis, before, whether that is a global pandemic or whether it's a crisis in our own lives, which we will all inevitably face. If we don't learn that one thing from this experience, that will be an added tragedy. And I think what's amazing is that, in spite of all of the partisan political games, this is universally supported, supermajorities of all parties, even, from Democrats to Trump voters to small businesses to whoever you poll, they love this policy. It's a universal win. And it's a common sense win. It's a protection that keeps all of us afloat. It lifts all of us. And I think if we cannot pass it now, and if we remain one of two countries in the world with no form of, national paid leave, what a lost opportunity.
We're going to do it. I know we're going to do it. So what are we talking about? For listeners, we're talking about paid family medical leave, which is so that you can be there when a new baby arrives by birth, by foster care, by adoption or other, and so that you can also be there when a loved one has a significant medical crisis, or yourself, you face a significant medical crisis for, we hope, up to 12 weeks. Now, our neighbor to the north, Canada, has how much, Dawn?
Actually, Kristen, I don't even know. Do you know?
They have like a year. I'm not even kidding you. They have a year. I have to re-look it up.
I think, what's amazing, I think that one of the countries with the most paid, I think it was just parental, but it was like Estonia. I mean, literally, we are behind the curve when you come to almost every country in the world. So yes, I believe it. I believe a year. I think a lot of European countries have a year. Yes, this should be a given.
They have 52 weeks. I just looked it up. 52 weeks, people. We are asking for 12 weeks. And that should be a no-brainer. In fact, it is a no-brainer. What I love about what you just said is that Republicans, Trump voters, Democrats, Green Party voters, people of all political persuasions across the United States of America agree that this is a no-brainer. We need paid family medical leave yesterday. And so we are seeing momentum growing. And I just want to share with people that this is not just the right thing to do, as many of the policies that we support. It's the smart thing to do. We have seen policies passed at the state level, and Dawn and I were just actually talking earlier today, and the cost savings are immense. There's 40% less need for government support programs like food stamps when you have paid family medical leave than when you don't. And when you have paid family medical leave, you're better able to afford infant child care when you go back into the labor force, which costs more than college. But if you're coming in from a deficit, not making pay or any earnings while you're recovering from giving birth to a child and bonding with a new child, then it's next to impossible to afford that infant child care, and it pushes people out of the labor force. So there's a ton of economic arguments. There's a ton also of health arguments. We're going to talk in a little bit about the Momnibus, which is also moving forward, but it's addressing maternal and infant health disparities and the rise in maternal and infant health, maternal mortality that is directly impacting in a significantly compounded way women of color, and how we can make sure that everyone has equal health access and equal time to recover. So part of the policy goes to that word equal. We want universal coverage, and we want it to cover everybody and for always. And can you talk about the importance of universality and who has this policy through work right now and who doesn't?
Excellent question, because very few people have it at all. I mean, right now in America, 4 in 5 workers in this country do not have access to paid family leave through their jobs. That is a lot of people. And honestly, try to imagine how you do that, how you manage that. If you give birth, if you have if you get cancer, if your parent is dying, if your child is sick, how do you manage that? This is unbelievable. In the United States, in this year, 2021, this is a crisis. It was a crisis long before COVID. And so what we know is that if we are able to pass this policy, we now have a path to do it. We have a commitment from the White House, a proposal in Congress, a path. It's our job to make sure that it gets done, because we cannot survive another pandemic. And again, this is something we needed before the pandemic, we will need long after. But if this doesn't teach us the importance of care, the value of care, the need for all of us to be there for the people we love, because even if we have paid leave, but let's say the nurse treating you in the hospital doesn't. Let's say the delivery driver from Amazon doesn't. Let's say your grocery store clerk. Let's say anyone you interact with in your daily life does not have paid leave. Here's what happens. It affects you. And I think this was a literal primer to us and how policy works and how we are only as protected as our most vulnerable neighbors, truly. And this is something that if we pass and make it universal, we know that it will actually lift all of us, that it will help individual workers and families. It will be a life raft. Also, it will yield millions of jobs, billions in wages, and trillions in GDP. And it's something that will make us more resilient, will make us more prepared, because all of us are going to face transitions and shocks in our lives. We're going to have the need to give care and to receive care. And this is something that simply prepares us for that and helps small businesses, helps our economy, and helps us as individuals. So this should be a no-brainer. It's a win for everybody. This is the time. We cannot be competitive as a country and remain one of the only ones in the entire world without any form of paid leave. And this is a historic moment. So for anyone listening, I hope you feel excited that you can be a part of this and you can help get this over the finish line.
I'm glad that you brought up world competitiveness, because recently, without prompting by any of us advocates, the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell brought up that our care infrastructure, or the lack thereof, is harming our international competitiveness as a country. So, it's not just people like us, like Dawn and I, who are calling for this. It's, lots and 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 lots of people. So this brings us to the lots and lots of people part, which is, Dawn, there's lots and lots of people listening. They're now fired up. I know you are. What should all of these lots and lots and lots of people do who are listening? And I want every listener to know that you're part of a wave of change, no matter what you do, whether it's 2 seconds, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 years, 20 years, it's going to make a difference because it's adding up with lots of other people. So what should people do?
You should talk to your representatives. And I want to assure you, I think there's often a feeling that no one listens to us, our voice doesn't matter. The opposite is true. They catalog every call you make, every email you send. And that is how, in large part, priorities are made in Congress. So what we need you to do is to call, to email, to talk to, if you see them in person, all of your Congress people, all of your senators. You can go to, I know our website, paidleaveforall.org, has a take action page where you can do that really easily. I'm sure Moms Rise. Kristen, do you still have a text to call, or do you have a page up too?
Well, now that you mention it, we do. People can text paid leave to 747-464. And we'll connect you directly to your U.S. senator, like directly. Like you don't even have to look up their phone number. You can just text paid leave to 747-464 and then a person will answer. And you don't even have to say anything complicated. You could just say, yes, on paid leave, please. And as Dawn just said, they'll catalog your call along with many other calls as yes, on paid leave. And that will go in. And even if your member of Congress, if your senator agrees with us already, they still want to hear from you because here's one key way to lobby is members of Congress lobbying other members of Congress. And so just imagine this. You're in the elevator as a member of Congress. I want everybody to pretend they're a member of Congress in the elevator. And then they have another member of Congress in the elevator. And then they say to them, hey, my constituents won't stop calling me about paid leave. Could you please get on our side already? So you're the excuse for members of Congress to bug other members of Congress when you call if they already agree with you.
Yes, absolutely. And these are the tools we have. This in the fight, these are what we have. You can make your voice heard, you can call, you can send emails, you can send letters, you can show up. I think as much if you hear of events, show up and ask questions. Say, I care about paid leave. What are you doing about it? Because this is their job and our lives are on the line. Our livelihoods are on the line. We've all been through what's the word for the year we've been through? We've all been through a year. And
it's been a year.
It's been a year. And one of the things we have to take away from it is the importance of care in our lives, both the economic value and importance of it, but also how much it means in terms of just humanity and our dignity and how we can no longer sustain this. And I think that our elected officials really need to hear that outrage and that urgency and that passion. That we cannot wait. The time is now. We should have had it 10 years ago, but we're not waiting anymore. So you all have a voice. Thank you for raising it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And, if you want to follow all of the organizations or many of them that you're hearing on the radio show today, you can follow #CareCan'tWait. Where can people follow you and get involved with you?
Yeah, so we have a campaign of dozens of organizations across the country. We're Paid Leave for All. So you can find us on Twitter and Facebook and all of these things. Paid Leave for All spelled out .org, or just, find us on, as I said, the hashtags and all that. But we try to keep everyone informed and connect you with our many wonderful members, including Moms Rising. And we hope you will engage because this is the moment. This is the moment to make history and to do something really, really transformational. So
the moment. Make those calls. Follow Paid Leave for All. Get involved. Follow Care Can't Wait. Keep raising your voice again, and again. Make a call once a week to your members of Congress. Just like put it on your calendar. Boom, calling in. Care Can't Wait. Paid leave, please. Thank you so much for being on, Dawn. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for changing the nation. Thanks you for being a superhero.
Back at you, Kristen. And thank you, everyone listening, for being a hero too.
We're going to take a quick break, but stick around. Next up, the Momnibus. What is it? Does it have wheels? It does. It actually does. But find out how. We'll be back in a quick flash.
We're gonna fight for love. Fight for love. Fight for love. Fight for love.
Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined right now by one of my very favorite people on the planet, Tina Sherman of Moms Rising. Welcome. Woo!
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you.
I'm super excited to talk with you because we have been working together on making a care infrastructure happen in the United States of America. We are lacking one, and making sure that in that care infrastructure, maternal and infant health disparities, systemic racism is also addressed. And when I saw the Biden budget blueprint plan and that it had some components of the Momnibus in there, I was like, yes.
Yay.
And I thought of you because it's in no small part because of your advocacy, you opening avenues for people to be heard, you putting pressure on again and again this legislative package called the Momnibus, that it actually got swooped into this dramatic movement for the care infrastructure. So first of all, yay!
Yay! Yes, we were so excited to see it in the Biden, it's the triple B, the blueprint.
Yes.
Very, very excited to see it there.
I love that it's a triple B, Biden budget blueprint in the Build Back Better plan. Oh my gosh, that's more than triple.
That's quadruple
five
triple
ripple.
B.
I don't even know what
Yes.
triple is. Yeah, quadruple, 5 ripple, 6 ripple. It sounds also at this point like an ice cream, but So a lot of people are probably wondering, what is the Momnibus? It started out as legislation, several pieces of legislation. Can you walk our listeners through what the Momnibus is and how it started?
Of course. So the Momnibus is a collection of this year's 12 bills that are meant to address the health disparities, particularly amongst Black and Brown mothers in our country. In case our listeners don't know, the rate of disparities are incredibly alarming in this country. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts. And that's even when you adjust for other factors such as socioeconomic factors, education, even adjusting for those factors. And what we also know is that 60% of deaths are preventable. And that's a really scary statistic. I mean, both of those, just when you think about 60% of deaths are preventable, like this is a crisis that we need to be addressing now. So we're incredibly excited to see it in Biden's budget blueprint. And so the Momnibus being this collection of 12 bills in the blueprint is pieces of the Momnibus that include diversifying the perinatal workforce. We know right now the workforce that takes care of pregnant people is not reflective of the parents that are seeking care. And so we want Black and Brown and Indigenous folks to be able to find a care provider that looks like them. And so we need to work on actively diversifying the workforce. And we also know that we don't have enough information right now on what exactly all of the causes. We have some understanding, but not a full understanding of what all the causes of maternal death and complications from childbirth are. And so the components that were included also include improving the data collection surrounding that. And so that's going to be really critical to continuing to address the problems. And then finally, we know that investing in community-based organizations that serve BIPOC families is critically important. And that is also included in the Biden administration's plan. So we are incredibly excited to see these pieces and feel like this is a huge step forward in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's a $3 billion investment out of a $3.5 trillion package. So I feel like it's a deal, right? Increasing maternal health and decreasing health disparities. That is a deal. I'm like, any legislators listening right now, this is a special deal. We're asking for a lot more. We're having to ask for a lot more in terms of like finally building a childcare system, and finally building a paid family medical leave system like 177 countries already have. And so I feel this is like, relatively speaking, just such a phenomenal investment for our country. Now, what a lot of people don't realize and is shocking is that maternal mortality, largely because of the bias and racial discrimination in the healthcare system in the United States of America, is getting worse. According to the World Health Organization, our maternal mortality, in other words, maternal death rates overall, are increasing in the United States of America, whereas they have been decreasing in most other industrialized nations. What do you think everybody needs to know about the stats relating to maternal health? I just feel like so many people don't hear the stats. We don't talk about the stats. The stats themselves are such a call to action.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one piece I really take away is that, we often think of America as having the best healthcare system available, but women in America are more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than women in so many other countries, the UK, Kazakhstan, and Libya. And we like to think of, again, America being the best place to receive healthcare. But when we really dig deep into that data, actually women are much more at risk in our country. And that's why these pieces like the Momnibus are so critical to addressing maternal health.
And what I love about the Momnibus is it not only includes money for healthcare, so important for access to healthcare, but also to study more what's going on. What are the causes of maternal death? Where is this happening? When is it happening? So we can make more investments. This is the beginning of investments. And what's your take on what else is likely to be needed after those studies come out? I have some guesses, but I you have some actual educated ideas.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I'm really grateful for is that I'm located in North Carolina, and I am honored to be able to sit on our maternal mortality review committee, which is funded by the CDC, and which would be a beneficiary of these dollars to increase that data collection. And we are looking at the deaths of every pregnant person within the first year postpartum, at 1 year postpartum, and really looking in depth at prenatal records and the other history, looking at what happened and what caused her death, and then making recommendations. And some of those recommendations, many of those recommendations, are dealing with systems, and we see time and time again where the system has failed parents, and it's incredibly heartbreaking. But what is rewarding is that we are making those recommendations to then, be turned into action. So some of those recommendations include, and I do actually want to give a shout out to postpartum Medicaid expansion, which actually passed earlier this year. Postpartum Medicaid expansion did as a part of the American Rescue Plan. And in March, that Biden signed into law in March. And that was extended for 5 years. So originally women would just be able to receive Medicaid 60 days postpartum. And now they'll be able to continue that 1 year after birth. And that alone, allowing that continuation of coverage, is such a huge deal, and a great preventer. One of the system recommendations that we make. And so it is, again, a critical investment that's being made, but we want to see that made permanent. Right now, it's only for 5 years. It's called the sunset in 5 years. And so eventually we would like to see that made permanent. And so I think that, when we start, again, looking back at that data collection, this is just going to be reaffirming that piece, that is going to be a critical piece to continuing to improve maternal health.
How can people who are listening lend a hand in helping to improve maternal health? I mean, I think one step is talking about it. Hello, everyone. Please, when we're talking about things, don't shy away from talking about women's health, about maternal health. Please do share that Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women, and that we need to do something about that immediately. Those statistics are so important for people to know so that we can make change. But what else should people be doing? And how do you have any conversation starters? Some of these conversations are kind of hard to start.
Yeah. I mean, I think, starting with the data, that 3 to 4 times statistic is such an alarming statistic. And I think, again, such a great way to start the conversation. And then when we think about 60% of those deaths being preventable, it's why and what do I need to do? So I think that, that conversation starter, and then that 60% piece really brings in sort of that call to action. And absolutely, Kristen, having these conversations, sharing our own birth stories, it is a way to sort of normalize what is happening when women are going in to deliver, and the challenges that can, obviously arise. So sharing those stories, and then, please sign our petitions, and, let us help you reach out to members of Congress and letting them know. They don't know, and they're not going to know without hearing from us. And that's really a key piece to having movement on these policies.
Yeah. And so for listeners, we do have active campaigns on the Moms Rising website that you can sign on to help support the Momnibus moving forward and maternal health, and addressing maternal health, racial disparities and discrimination in healthcare services, as well as when you do call and talk to your member of Congress, because I know you're going to, feel free to share a abbreviated version of your birth story with your member of Congress. Our stories are so powerful. And, I said abbreviated version because I myself cannot share my birth stories in under 5 hours, right? Like, so it's hard. This happened and this happened. But an abbreviated version of your birth story, I think, is so important. And the other thing that you shared is when we're thinking about the birthing time period, and Tina, I thought this was so important that you raised it. Like when we're talking about maternal mortality, it's not just the moment of giving birth, it's what happens afterwards, for that year afterwards. Mm-hmm. How do you heal? What happens with your body? And there's such a culture in the United States of America of not talking about any of these things. And the fact of the matter is that there's, a tremendous amount that we need to center, lift up, and talk about in a bigger way. We only have a minute left, but I feel like we could have a whole show on why don't we talk about these things? Why? Why do you think? Why? Just in the last minute or so.
I think there's a lot of fear and stigma. And there's the ideal, what should be the ideal. Yeah, I think people shy away from wanting to have the conversations.
And what I think is so important about this is just that we see time and time again that the hurdles, the struggles that women and women of color face are often blamed on the person who is experiencing the struggle. So yes. I think this is another area where that happens, where we kind of feel the stigma. We don't want to share because people will think it's our fault. Maybe we didn't, have the best diet, or, maybe we did something wrong. But when a ton of people are experiencing the same types of problems, and we're seeing the same types of structural racism, we don't have a system where we're can really blame the individuals, So when you share your story, you're showing that we actually have a structural problem in the United States. It's not any person alone's fault. So I just encourage people to share their stories with members of Congress and with each other. And what are your thoughts on that? Just in fast closing, we're almost out of time.
I think that the sharing our stories with members of Congress, unfortunately, when we look at Congress, it is not reflective of the rest of the country. And so they don't look like me, most of Congress, and most of Congress doesn't look like you. And they don't know what real families are going through every day. And so sharing our stories, even when it is painful, is so critical, so that that members understand and know what real families are going through. And I think it's the only way we're ultimately going to see change, is through the power of storytelling. The data is important. The data is compelling. But the stories, the real life experiences are what's going to move people.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on, Tina. Thank you for leading the way. Thank you for changing policy, changing the nation. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Kristen.
Well, that's it for our show today. Thanks so much for tuning in as we tackle the top topics facing our nation in a way that requires the most boring disclaimer on the history of the planet Earth. Views expressed on this show are those of the individual speakers and should not be attributed to Moms Rising, to this station, or to any news or social media service that may disseminate a recording of this show to the public or to any segment of the public. Boom! We'll catch you next week.
We're gonna fight for